A yellow auction tag was tied to the steering wheel. Salvage only. $225. The man from the bank wrote it down in less than a minute. He never looked under the dash. He never checked the ground strap. He never wiped the dust off the little service plate beside the fuel pump. But Ruthie Bell Mercer did, and on a cold November morning in Reynolds County, Missouri, that was the difference between losing a farm and keeping one. The Mercer place sat on 112 acres of rocky bottomland outside Ellington, where the creek made a hard turn behind the hay barn, and the soil changed every 30 feet. Red clay at the rise, black silt near the bend, gravel under the north fence line. Ruthie knew that ground the way some people know a song, not because anyone tested her on it, because she had walked it behind her father since she was tall enough to keep up. Her father, Willis Mercer, had never been a loud man. He kept his receipts in a cigar box and marked rainfall on the kitchen calendar in pencil. When a storm was coming, he could stand in the doorway, look at the walnut leaves, and tell Ruthie which field would hold water by dawn. He died in March, 2 springs before the auction tag appeared. A blood clot, the doctor said, fast enough that the coffee was still warm on the table when Ruthie found him. After that, the farm became a list of things that could not wait: the feed bill, the property tax, the note at Riverbend Agricultural Bank, the hired help they could no longer afford. And behind the lower machine shed, half covered by a blue tarp with one corner missing, sat the old International Harvester 706 diesel. Her father had bought it used when Ruthie was 11. Faded red paint, narrow front tires, a seat patched twice with black tape. It had pulled hay wagons, disked the south field, and once dragged a stuck county truck out of the ditch during a February ice storm. Then it quit. That was what everyone said. It quit. It had not fired in nearly 5 years. Mice had packed the battery tray with nest grass. The exhaust cap was frozen crooked. One rear tire had sunk 3 inches into the mud. By the time the bank sent someone to inventory the place, the tractor looked less like equipment and more like a monument to a year nobody wanted to talk about. The bank representative was named Alan Creel. He arrived in a clean gray vest with a digital clipboard and boots that still had the store crease across the toes. He spent 17 minutes in the machine shed. Ruthie counted, because she had learned that people who were not staying often moved quickly. Creel circled the tractor once. He pressed the starter button. Nothing happened. He leaned toward the engine, listened to the silence as if silence were proof, then tapped 2 fingers on the clipboard. Non-operational, he said. Ruthie stood by the shed post with her hands in the pockets of her coat. She told him the engine had turned by hand the summer before. She told him the block had not frozen. She told him her father had drained the water separator and covered the intake. Creel nodded without looking up. "I'll mark it as salvage," he said. $225, maybe less once towing is figured. The yellow tag went on the steering wheel. That tag did something to Ruthie that the bank statements had not done. The statements were numbers. Hard numbers. But honest ones. The tag felt different. It felt like a stranger had walked into her father's shed, pointed at 30 years of work, and called it scrap, because it did not answer him fast enough. 2 weeks later, when the estate paperwork allowed her to buy back small equipment from the inventory list, Ruthie paid the bank $225 for the tractor she already owned in every way that mattered. She did not celebrate. She folded the receipt once, put it in the cigar box beside her father's rainfall notes, and went to the shed. For the first 3 nights, she did not try to start it. That was the part people missed later. Ruthie did not fix the tractor by hoping. She fixed it by refusing to rush the question. She cleaned the mud off the rear casting and found the serial plate. She pulled the dipstick and let the oil drip against a white paper towel. Dark, but not gray. No water line. She took off the valve cover and turned the engine by hand with a breaker bar until each rocker moved. Slow, stiff, but moving. On the fourth night, she found the first lie. The main ground strap behind the battery box looked intact from the top. From the side facing the frame, it had corroded down to a green-white crust. It could carry just enough contact to fool an impatient eye, and not enough current to wake the starter. A new strap from a parts shelf in Poplar Bluff cost $18.74. The starter clicked the next evening. Not enough. But not nothing. Ruthie wrote that down on a grocery receipt, because the legal pad was in the truck. Click after ground strap. Engine not locked. The second lie was in the fuel. Everyone who had walked past the tractor assumed the pump had failed. Her father had said the same thing once, mostly because he had been tired and the hay was already late, but when Ruthie pulled the sediment bowl, she found a layer of brown flakes packed against the screen like coffee grounds. She cleaned the glass, replaced the screen, drained 2 gallons of dead fuel, and bled the line until the diesel ran clean into a mason jar. Filters, hose, and 2 cans of fresh fuel cost $63.20. The third lie was smaller than a thumbnail. Behind the dash, wrapped in old electrical tape, was a cracked ring terminal on the wire feeding the solenoid. The metal had split almost completely through. From the front, it looked connected. Under a finger, it moved like a loose tooth. Ruthie stared at it for a long time. Not because it was complicated, because it was simple. A man with a clipboard had called a tractor dead over a part that cost less than lunch. She replaced the terminal, cleaned the contact, tightened the nut. Then she left the battery on a slow charge overnight, and went inside before she could talk herself into trying it too soon. At 6:12 the next morning, frost was still silver on the shed roof. Ruthie opened both doors, climbed onto the torn seat, and put one boot against the clutch. She pressed the starter. The old diesel rolled once, twice. Then it coughed, threw a hard black breath out of the stack, and caught. The whole shed changed shape around that sound. Tools trembled against the workbench. A swallow nest dropped a crumble of dried mud from the rafter. The tractor settled into a rough idle, then a steadier one, as if it had been waiting for someone patient enough to ask the right question. Ruthie did not cry then. She just sat there with both hands on the wheel, watching the exhaust pulse into the cold air. By spring, the yellow tag was still hanging from a nail above the workbench. She kept it there on purpose. When Caleb Nix from the county extension office came by to look over her planting plan, he stopped in the shed doorway and frowned at the tractor idling behind her. "Is that the 706 they listed as salvage?" he asked. Ruthie nodded. Caleb walked around it, slower than Alan Creel had. He checked the tires, listened to the engine, looked at the new ground strap, and then at the yellow tag on the wall. "What did you put into it?" Ruthie had the numbers ready. Parts were $118.46. Battery was borrowed. Fluids came out of the hay money. Caleb gave a low whistle. A running 706 diesel in that condition could bring $7,000 to $9,000 at a regional farm sale. More if 2 neighbors wanted it badly enough. Ruthie did not sell it. That was the part the men at the diner got wrong. They turned it into a story about a girl flipping a tractor and outsmarting the bank for cash. But Ruthie never cared about winning an auction. Room argument. She needed horsepower in April more than she needed applause. The 706 disked 42 acres of bottom ground that month. It pulled the drill through the north field, where the clay liked to grab. It hauled 3 hay wagons in June. It broke 1 belt, fouled 1 injector, and marked the gravel road with small black oil spots. But it worked. And because it worked, Ruthie did not have to hire a neighbor's tractor at $60 an hour. Because she did not hire the tractor, She kept enough money to buy seed. Because she planted on time, the beans came up before the dry spell. By October, she had paid $5,870 against the operating note. Not enough to make the bank friendly. Enough to make them quiet. Alan Creel came back once. He did not come for the tractor. He came for a paperwork signature after the fall settlement. Ruthie met him on the porch with a pen in her hand and mud on the knees of her jeans. The 706 was parked by the shed, still faded, still ugly, still alive. Creel looked at it. Then he looked at Ruthie. For a second he seemed ready to say something about the inventory sheet. Maybe a joke. Maybe an apology. Maybe nothing honest at all. Ruthie signed the paper before he found the words. The bank had its ledger. Ruthie had hers. His ledger said salvage, $225. Hers said ground strap, fuel screen, ring terminal, $118.46, 42 acres disked, 1 crop saved, 1 farm still under the Mercer name. There are people who look at old things and only see the cost of hauling them away. And there are people who know that not every silence is an ending. Sometimes it is just a machine waiting in a shed. Sometimes it is a field waiting for rain. Sometimes it is a daughter, standing where her father stood, learning that the world can misprice almost anything. The yellow tag is still in that shed. The tractor still starts. And every time it does, Ruthie can hear the difference between scrap and truth.